Do you love made-for-TV movies? We sure do. We always have. In 30 years of friendship, we've laughed, cried, diagnosed, and obsessed over every made-for-TV movie we could get our eyes on.
Did you know that most made-for-TV movies are about amazing people who have risked their lives to change the world?
We'll be taking you through the last 60 years of some of the most powerful stories. We'll see what's changed and what's exactly the same.
We also love a nice synthesizer and a sweet satin blouse. And we think you will too.
I'm Steph.
I'm Liz.
And this is
No One Would Tell, Except Us podcast.
Welcome to another episode of No One Would Tell, Except Us. I'm Steph.
I'm Liz.
And today we're going to be talking about For the Love of Nancy from 1994. Liz, do you want to give us a brief synopsis of this film? Oh, but before that, we should give another trigger warning because this does have heavy themes of eating disorders and food abuse. And Liz and I are not trained specialists in any of these areas. So again, please keep yourself safe. And if any of this is disturbing or triggering to you, please kindly stop listening.
Yes. Sure. Okay. So For the Love of Nancy is basically, it says it's inspired by true events. So that means we don't have a particular person that we can base this off. But basically it's about a college-bound young woman named Nancy Walsh. And she is very much struggling with leaving her home, starting kind of a new chapter in her life. And she kind of wants things to stay the way that they are in high school with her friends. But she is kind of, in a way, pushed forward, and she has to have her wisdom teeth removed. And during that process, because it hurts and she's on medication, she doesn't really have her normal diet. And she stops eating. And when she starts getting some positive responses, she starts being like, this kind of feels good. And also, it's something that in her life that she can control, her weight, that is. And it just starts to spiral and goes into anorexia nervosa. And she starts to spiral downward and downward. And this is kind of her story, as well as the story of her family trying to save her life.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that this was probably one of the first movies that even touched on anorexia and kind of was showcasing it in more of an educational way. And I think that this also got a lot of press at the time. It is starring Tracy Gold. She actually was a guest on Oprah regarding this movie because it was so unprecedented. So I think this was one of the breakthrough movies that was actually like, this is, what an eating disorder actually means and what it actually is. And there were a lot of misconceptions before then. And I think there still are now, but I think this was one of the first kind of attempts to bring this to like prime time. So it was pretty significant. So let's get into it. Score. I know we always talk about the score because it really is the first impression of a movie. And this just had some sweet, sweet flute. Like this had some sweet flute going on.
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, this is the kind of score that I'm accustomed to with made for TV movies because it's a little bit more subtle than sort of that homicidal score, that we've been hearing.
Yeah. Which is perfect because you don't know really which direction this is going to go. It's just kind of like normal, but upbeat, but something is going to happen. It was good. It keeps you on your toes. It's good flute.
Keeps you guessing. And it's like you're watching, it's like an audible Hallmark card. You know what I mean? Like you're like, these people are safe and this is like a, pretty neighborhood. So
very pretty.
We start and we actually meet Nancy's mom first, who is played by Jill Clayburgh. And she is in so many movies like Bridesmaid and An Unmarried Woman and has had a really illustrious career. And we meet her first, and like 90 seconds in, you're like, whoa, this woman has expectations.
Yeah, I wrote like she's like a corporate baller. Like she's just kind of like in charge. Not the husband, not that like he has to be, but like typically in these movies, especially that's how it would go. But she wears the pants in the family, and you know it.
She wears the pants. I think they have like some kind of aviation company. And so
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think the dad's like, woohoo, fun money, like airplanes, and the mom's like, I'm going to tell everyone what to do. And
Yeah,
we don't
basically.
use computers. So I'm going to have to like really tell everybody what to do and like fill out paperwork and like yell at people on the phone. So that's the
She does it well.
that's the tone of the house.
Mhm.
I'm not going to lie. I didn't remember Jill Clayburgh in particular in this role from when we watched this, when we were young. So my first thought was like, oh, wow, this mom is like really somebody that would annoy me a lot. And I can see where this is going. Not that it's her fault, but the tone of the house is very much expectation based.
Yes, the mom definitely is a type like where you would say like a Facebook soccer mom. Like she's very much that stereotypical, like controlling, bossy, like things done a certain way. If she wants the curtains open a certain way, they better stay that way. Like, don't you dare move them an inch. She will know. And what's sad is, as a child, she annoyed me. And as an adult, I felt like I was looking in the mirror.
Well, yeah, I mean, you probably were a little. And I think that it's kind of the thing where it's like, it's interesting because obviously she's like a loving, caring mom.
Very much.
But it's like just because she's not like yelling and screaming and like beating her kids, it's like the expectation of the lifestyle is a different kind of energy being imposed on them, which I don't think was, talked about certainly 30 years ago. That was not the norm. Like it was like, this is a good mom. Like that was like, this is a good mom.
Still is.
Right. So I
Don't
was
make
like,
me analyze myself.
I was like, shut this lady up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's the first character we meet. And then
we see Zach Morris.
Oh, yes.
The brother.
How do we say his last name? Mark Paul
Glassy.
We'll just call him Mark Paul because that's,
Yeah.
So, yes. So we see him a lot of star power. Absolutely. I mean, especially during 1994.
Yeah. And his hair, when I was younger, I must say it's longer. So this is like maybe Saved by the Bell, the college years. Like it's kind of like that longer like hair. And when I was a kid, I was always like, oh gosh, like I hate it.
Yeah.
And now as an adult, like maybe because that like surfer boy curtain look is in, I'm like, oh yeah, it looks good.
You're like, hey now.
I know.
So yeah, he's another star that's like in the 90s and his agent's like, let's do something different, like let's get you a role that's like a little bit different from Saved by the Bell. So it was really nice to see him. And so I think the first situation kind of opens on mom telling Nancy that they got the wrong prom dress. Is that right? It's like the wrong color.
Yeah, she's like, oh, your dress is here, which we can talk about that dress for a long time.
Yeah.
Not a great dress. But basically she pulls out this like really hideous prom dress and she's like, it's red. Like she thought it was going to be black.
Right.
And the mom's just like, well, I mean, I just always thought, a black dress, like that's what I wore. That's what, I don't know. And Tracy's like, okay, well, I still like it. Like, I think it's a nice dress. And then mom's like, I don't know. Are you sure, Tracy? Do you want to maybe go try something different on? Like, are you sure this is what you like? And even though Tracy's mind in that moment is made up, like she clearly likes the dress. This is the dress she wants to wear. Her mom it's not her vision. So she starts to question, like, are you sure that's what you like? Are you sure you want that? And it's like in one perspective, you're like, oh, the mom wants to make sure her kid is happy. But then in the other perspective, you're like, oh, she's just pushing her agenda. So you have like both coming at Tracy at the same time.
Yeah, like the mom was like, this should be black. And then she's like, if this should be black, I'm going to call them, of course.
Yeah.
And Tracy's like, no, mom, I picked red. And it's like, well, you're both wrong because it's maroon, first of all. And secondly, it's like,
it was.
And
that dress was so gross.
It was seriously like a mid 90s, like you have a dinner after a conference after work dress. Like it was not a prom dress. It was like, it had nothing to do with prom.
She should wear like kitten heels with like white ruffled socks. Like it was just like,
yeah,
it wasn't good.
No, it was not good. And so I was like, this is the first indicator that, Nancy's being told not to trust her judgment, essentially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's that kind of thing where it's like, your mom knows best and it's nice you have an opinion, but this is what it should be.
Yeah. And even Tracy says, and I noted, she says, I feel sad now, like to her mom. And her mom's just like, oh, you're going to feel sad. Like you're going to have a great time. And I just kind of thought that was a very like subtle omission. Like Tracy's trying to tell her mom like her feelings and she doesn't know how. Like some people are very good at being like, I'm mad or I'm sad and you're annoying me. And then some people, like, it's almost like dutiful daughter. Like, you're just kind of like, hey, I'm feeling this way. Mom, pick up on it. And mom is just so much on the other side of things. She just thinks like, oh, you're just sad because, maybe you don't know which dress you want. When Tracy clearly was like, I picked this out. This is what I like. You should have just celebrated my decision.
Yeah. The mom's like, we don't get sad in this house,
Yeah, pretty much.
So that was kind of like.
Your father was sad one time and I killed him.
Yeah. It's like, that is clearly not in the program.
No.
So, yeah, I mean, the prom's like unimpressive. Like they have a lot of balloons. The band is like kind of like a smoky roadhousey act.
Yeah, it's like country because they're like doing like a line dance. And I wrote that. I'm like, 90s line dance? Was that like a thing? Like I was we were too little, but like they like knew the moves. I'm like, is this like the electric slide? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, I wrote that they were playing a song that's like the I Don't Want to Go Home blues, which I don't think I've ever heard in a prom. Then they're still dancing and it's 2 a.m.
Yeah. I was like, dang. I'm like, what about those teachers? Like, I would be like, time to go home.
Yeah.
Like, it's 11 p.m. I've been here since 7. You got to go.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. What dance at what school? It's like, come whenever, stay whenever. Like, are the kids like locking up?
Yeah, like at 4 a.m., like it's like the bright lights, like you have to get out. Yeah. It's like it was a little odd. It was odd for sure. And so then she's like hanging out with her, core group of friends and
the park at 3 a.m. with pizza and balloons from the dance. Like, they had a picnic blanket. Like, this was major pre-planning. Do you really think, as teenagers especially, you're going to be like, you know what? I'm just going to make sure my back of my car has a picnic blanket and these wine glasses to hold our Pepsi and just like,
yeah,
that made no sense.
Well, maybe Nancy's mom put all of that in the car because they're
She's
not
like,
doing
honey,
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knives go on the left.
Right. So then we learn one of the friends is going to be like a U.S. admiral in the Navy. And then one of them is going to be like a lawyer. So these are like really adult friends. Like these are like heavy career goals already.
Yes.
And like this was one of the first scenes where like I could really like feel and emphasize with Nancy because Tracy Gold just like killed it. Like she was just like kind of listless and she's like, I don't really like know what I want my future to be and I don't really want things to change from right now. And obviously it's kind of like a foreboding like death wish type statement.
Yeah.
But I really felt her. I was like, oh my gosh, like I really empathized with her in that scene.
I think, well, she says 18 is as good as it gets. And so she's already like putting kind of like a nail in the coffin. Like she's just already seen it. Like life is not going to get better than this. Everything in the future seems just too scary. Like she
Yeah.
obviously is just not ready. And I think that that is so indicative of how you really feel right when you graduate high school.
Mhm.
You're relieved that it's over. Well, most of us are.
Yeah.
But you're like, I don't want to go to college. Like now I'm one step closer to like paying for toilet paper. Like it's just like I think most kids are like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I think it's rare to find a child that's like, I'm gonna do this and then I'm gonna do this and then I'm gonna do this.
And I
You're
think
just scared.
because she's around such heavy expectations,
Yeah.
that is like daunting. Because
Mhm.
she's like, I'm not going to have like the toilet paper covers that my mom has. Like, I'm not going to be able to figure this out because it's such a high standard.
Yes.
And I could see that being like really overwhelming. And so she's like opening her heart to her friends. And then it's like, they're like, well, we're leaving and starting our lives. So,
Yeah. Like we basically are already figured everything out, Tracy, and you're the one that's behind. So she's just feeling like, yeah, completely overwhelmed. And I agree. The mom seems like a mom where she would probably do a lot for her kids, thinking it's serving them and not realizing that they're not like learning how to do things on their own or in the way that they do things because
right.
her way is the right way. So yeah,
Right.
she's definitely like, how am I going to do this?
Yeah. So then Tracy gets home and like, I don't know, we both have brothers. You tell me. I have never woke up my brother. Like if he's sleeping, I like don't wake him up in the middle of the night to chat. That's just me.
Well, at this point, yeah, Trace is coming home at what, 4 or 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And her brother's like on the couch. Like my first instinct was be like, kick him in the shin and run.
Yeah.
Like I'd just be like, mess with him, slap him, like put his hand in warm water, whatever it was.
Right.
But like to wake him up and him be like, oh,
Yeah.
Jesus, my brother would be like, get the F out of here. Like,
Yeah.
why did you wake me?
Yeah. I was like, this is not realistic to me whatsoever. And
Yeah.
and
what is he waiting up for her? Like immediately he's like, tell me about the dance.
yeah, I was like, wow, they're close. Then they kiss goodnight on the lips. And
wait, they do?
Oh, yeah. And I don't know if it's the kind of thing where you like go in for the cheek and it just kind of gets, like a little side lip. But I was like, whoa, okay. They just had a heart to heart. They're kissing goodnight, like way too close on the face to the lips. What is happening?
Could you imagine
No.
not only waking your brother up, but like him sleeping like that and then you kiss him?
No. Ew. I was like, this scene is
that
losing
man
me.
probably like.
Yeah. I'm like, Tracy Gold better bring it back.
Well, no, I was just going to say that conversation too, this makes it even better, is he's like, hey, Nance, tomorrow, meaning today, you're going to get all 4 of your wisdom teeth out.
That's right.
Like,
yeah.
And she even says, she's like, why would mom schedule this surgery a day after my 4 a.m. prom? Like,
right. She knew she was going to be out all night.
Yeah. What mom also is like, you know what, Nance, let's look at our calendar. Okay. Saturday's the prom, Sunday. And who is taking their wisdom teeth out? Like, I'm assuming it's a Sunday. Like, nobody has their prom on a Wednesday.
That's right.
So
that's right.
What weird dentist or orthodontist is yanking her wisdom teeth out on a Sunday too? Like, they need, yeah. And then they're just like, oh, mom. I would be like, I'm not going.
Yeah.
Like, I'm hungover. Like, there's no way.
No. I think I did have all 4 of mine pulled at once.
Yeah, but weren't you like put under?
I don't remember because I feel like I was at the dentist so much because I just like ate so much junk and like didn't take care of my teeth at all. So I don't remember that particular time, but I do remember being like, oh, this is what a migraine is. And this is the first time I probably like don't want to eat anything, which, is not the case with me. So, yeah, pretty brutal. And like, yeah, pretty poor planning on mom's part, which doesn't make sense because she's a big planner. So
Yeah. And then her brother knows her schedule. Like, no teenage brother would be like, oh, I checked my calendar, Nancy. You've got your wisdom teeth out tomorrow. He'd be like, I don't care. Bye.
Right. It was like, yeah, it was odd. The relationship definitely is written odd.
Mhm.
So then she gets her surgery, and then she's like, if I miss a meal, it's not the end of the world, which is like the first ticker that, there might be an issue. She won't
Yeah,
eat a sandwich at work.
And then let's just make note, the like brothers in the yard, they're like making a koi pond.
Right.
And I wrote koi mafia because it was just like so I was like, is this what they do for a living? Like, it was just like, get the koi out. Like, don't throw them. I don't know. It was just a lot about koi, I thought. But
Yeah, it was a major project for just being a
Yeah.
project. Like, there was
Yeah.
something beyond the koi pond going on.
Yeah. They're maybe hiding a body in that koi pond. I don't know.
Yeah, it was weird for sure.
Yeah. So this is kind of the thing. So she's not eating. She goes to work. She goes to the deli. She works at a deli, and her coworker brings out the largest tuna sandwich I've ever seen in my life. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't like submarine bread. Like, it wasn't like an Italian loaf. It
No.
was like a regular piece of just gigantic bread, like 4 pieces put together.
Yeah.
And then she's like, do you want half? I couldn't possibly eat this. I'm like, nobody could, especially tuna. And
Yeah.
Tracy's like, no,
Right.
I can't.
Because it's
My wisdom
gross.
teeth hurt. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's like a Wonder Bread Club sandwich with like an immense amount of tuna.
Right.
Yeah.
And so she like turns back. She's like, okay, my shift is done. And she turns back to look at her friend wolfing down this 20-pound tuna. And she's just like, that felt good. And in that moment, I'm like, yeah, I'd feel good too, leaving that thing behind. But like, it's
Yeah.
like the first moment where you're like, it's starting to be like, that felt good to control that situation. Like, you can see it in
Yes.
her face.
Yes. That was definitely pivotal. And
Yeah.
yeah, her having like any kind of food service job
Yeah.
had to be, extremely difficult, because if she was like folding sweaters somewhere, I mean, obviously she wouldn't be like faced with like, eat the sweater. But if she's at a
I
deli,
Yeah, it's in your face. But I think too, like, maybe it fuels it because like later in the film, like when her friend, and we can bring this up later, but her friend is eating chips. She's just like, do you know how many calories are in there? Like, she's starting to notice other people's eating habits and kind of being like, I don't do that. Like, she starts thinking, I'm better. Like, I don't sit there
yeah,
and eat all this food. So when she's watching people eat what is probably a normal, albeit besides the tuna sandwich, lunch
yeah,
at the deli,
yeah,
she's probably like, I have the willpower to not do what they're doing, even though the people are doing is normal. In her eyes, it's like, I'm better than you. Like, it's a feeling. It's kind of like that control. And I know how that feels because I have a tendency to be very controlling, like just in my spirit. Like, I can be a very anxious and I like things a certain way. And so it's like, you do have to catch yourself being like, I can do that and you can't, even though that's not a good thing, but it feels like
Yeah.
it's like a trick.
yeah. It's almost like you're filling something up that can't be filled.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, now we know, because there is so much talk about, self-reflection, like you can identify that. But
Right.
I think then, since, talking about anything you feel was like really not okay, that kind of
No.
spurs out into all different kinds of like disorders.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So then we start talking about college, and mom's like, what are you even thinking, wanting a single room in college?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Right. She gets a single and her mom's just like, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. Like, and she's like, no, mom, like, I'm really happy. Like, I want a single. And she's like, no, you need a roommate. You're going to be going off, Tracy, and like joining things and having all these like parties and friends. And like, you need to have somebody in the room. It's like what I had. It's going to be so much fun. Like, that's what you want.
Right.
She's like, not really.
Yeah. And I'm like, can we tone it down just a little? Like, the reaction is just so big. It's like, we need to chill.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, even if you feel like maybe your child would do better with somebody else, like at that point, it's like, this is their college experience. I wouldn't mess with it. I'd be like, you know what? If that makes you feel a little less nervous about college, you may in the future, maybe you'll want to, but they'll figure that out. Like if they're happy and they're like, this is what I like, leave it be. Let it cook. Like walk
yeah,
away, mom. But she thinks she knows what's best. Her and Tracy are obviously very different in personalities, and the mom, I feel like, is trying to mold her into who she is. And I don't think she's doing it maliciously, or I think she really thinks she's looking out for the best interests of Tracy, but she's not realizing that she's mentally screwing her up.
yes, exactly. And then there's kind of like a series of events, like she's running more and more and more and more, like she's like running all over the neighborhood.
Yes.
She doesn't want to go bowling with her friends, which,
Right.
you know, is not like her. And,
Right.
you know, she doesn't want to eat dinner. And her parents are like, you know, basically like, eat, damn you, you know. And she's like, no.
I don't, yeah, she starts kind of like discreetly like hiding food in her napkin and things like that, finding ways of not eating it, kind of just picking at her plate. And I noted that like through this kind of like montage of scenes, like her brother, Zach Morris, Mark Pell, he's like, oh, Nance, did you lose weight? Like, you look really good. Which, first of all, she never needed to lose weight. Like, in this movie, Tracy Gold, I read, was still recovering from anorexia. So she was very thin, even at her like normal like shots. Like, I
Yeah.
was like, that's a very slender person. So to comment to somebody, like, who goes up to somebody very slender and is like, did you lose weight? You look so good.
And it's her brother.
Right. Like, why would he say that? He wouldn't even look at her. Like, he'd just be like, where's a koi? Give me that fruit roll up. Like,
That's right.
yeah, there would be no being like, hey, you look good. And then she weighs
Yeah.
herself and she's lost like 6 pounds. Because
Right.
she's like, no, I haven't lost weight. And then she was like, weighs herself. And I don't know if that's the first time she's like weighing herself, like probably consistently. But she like
Yeah.
looks and she's like, oh my gosh, I've lost 6 pounds. And the elation that's on her face, like it's starting to click in, like what I'm doing is working and I can control this. And like people are giving me positive response. So it's like that behavior is reinforced, even though people don't know what they're saying is reinforcing this terrible mindset. It's just what she needs to keep going.
Yes. It's like completely validation, you know,
Mhm.
and her family obviously has never even heard of this kind of thing. So they're like, you know,
Right.
just chill out and like eat this plate of lasagna later. It's like this girl is not eating any lasagna. Like it's not going to happen.
No.
And then her mom undermines her and gets her into a room with people
Yeah.
in college, which is not what she wanted.
No.
And she's like, you know, can everyone just like be quiet for 5 seconds and let me decide anything in my life? And they're all like, no, like we can't. We can't do that.
No,
Sorry.
they really can't.
Right. So it's basically like we just keep seeing more and more like anything she says about how she feels is just like completely overridden by her mom.
Yeah.
And it's like that false toxic positivity, right? That's like not real.
Right. And she just, in like college, like even when people are trying to connect with her, like they're like, hey, Nancy, like grab a piece of pizza, come sit with us. She was like, oh, yeah, I will. And they're like, well, you better grab one before it's gone. And so you can see her like reluctantly, because she doesn't want to look abnormal. She grabs a piece
Right.
and like brings it back to her room. And she just kind of blots it like to get the oil off. And then she's just like, no, I can't do this. Like it's probably too fatty or whatever it is that she rationalizes why she can't eat that. And she just kind of never goes to see her like dorm friends. And, you know, they're kind of starting to be like, she's kind of weird, not like behind her back. That's a very short scene, but, you know, you can just tell that she's not really fitting in college. She's not wanting to make friends. And it's just, she's just really focused on controlling what she can. And that right now
Yeah.
is her food and that is her exercise regime. And
Right.
one thing that really stood out to me is when she's by her like desk, she looks in the mirror and she looks at herself like a makeup mirror and she looks just kind of disgusted. And then she looks down and like one hairbrush, she has like a row of them, and like one hairbrush is like slightly, maybe like half an inch askew. And she's like, puts it over. And I'm like, oh, that is like, I know how she feels in that moment, like so strong. Like everything when you're that anxious and you're that just like in that control and you're just feeling so overwhelmed, the tiniest things that no one would notice are glaring. And it's like, I just have to go over there and like touch that and move that, or I can't like go on. Like it's
Right.
just because it's like, that's the one thing in this spiral of uncontrol that just feels like that has to make sense to me. And
Yeah.
so stuff that you normally would just disregard, that you focus on and you just become hyper focused on. And that's almost like, I wonder if like anorexia and OCD like go very hand in hand. I wonder
too. I mean, I think they're both like compulsive disorders.
Yeah.
And what was interesting to me is like, if you really like stand back and look at it all, it's like in college, this is like the first time she has any privacy. I mean, like in her house, it's like nobody can be in a room for 15 seconds without somebody being like, hey, what are you doing? Like, and so it's almost like in a way, it's like she has privacy, which makes her feel free. But all that's doing is like allowing her to live out this disease, which obviously is like incredibly dangerous because like nobody's checking in on her. So it's kind of like she was suffocating at home. And now it's like she has more freedom to self-destruct. And I just thought that was like interesting because to me, like her home life is like so annoying. Like I would be locking my bedroom door. I mean, there's like always somebody coming in. And so it's almost she
has little room to like reflect. She has little room to breathe. And then when she is alone, I don't think she knows how to do that either. And, you know, I almost wonder, and you don't get into the mom, but like, did the mom have things so particular that she's like, I need to have things particular? Like, it just becomes this like cycle of just like watching your mom do that, then you do that. But she, you know, materializes it into also like a disorder because she doesn't feel heard by her mom. But her mom, you know, I have to like really like sympathize with her mom, empathize with her mom, because I know her mom really is like, I think this is what's best for you, Tracy. And it's completely not, because I think her mom has her own set of control issues. She just does it through controlling how her family is ran and how her business is ran. And it's successful. So she thinks, I'm doing a good job. Like what I'm doing is working. I have a good business. My family runs like a clock. My husband loves me. Like he's happy. He's, you know, off in outer space riding his airplanes. And like I've got this down. So she is like, if everything's working, then this is working, where she doesn't understand that her daughter is different than her and she's drowning. She just wants someone to listen to her. And it was just, it's a whole bag of stuff that could be unpacked. And I felt like in real life, the mom definitely would need a lot of therapy. Like I was like, the mom has a lot of control issues as well. And it's just interesting how they come out in different ways.
Yeah. Well, and I think later, obviously, we'll talk about that specialist, but he does say it's a family disease. And,
oh, yeah,
you know,
it's true. Yeah.
It's like there are a lot of people who have a certain life, have a certain lifestyle. And then when they are back with their family, they're like right back in whatever role they had.
Yes.
And it's very triggering for a lot of people because, you know, if a whole family doesn't grow together, I think that if individuals grow, it's hard to like go back into that dynamic. So Nancy goes home and then, you know, her mom invites her friend over without asking Nancy if she wants to see her friend.
Which she doesn't.
That would really irk me. Like I've been in my house and my dad has like talked to, you know, not friends, but like acquaintances I've had like walking down the street. And I've been like, what
Gosh.
the F are you doing? Like,
Yeah, like,
I don't want to
don't
see these
do
people.
that.
You need to stop.
Yeah.
So this is the scene you were talking about when she's like, do you have any idea how many calories you just ate?
Yeah, her friend's eating like a snack size bag of like Doritos or something, like a normal thing. Not even like that many. Like, I wasn't like, oh, she's got a huge bowl and she's just going to town.
Yeah.
Like, nobody normally would comment. I mean, even if my friend was going to town, I wouldn't care. But you wouldn't normally like comment on like a fun size bag of Doritos. Like, that's just like a snack. That's a normal thing. And she's just like, her friend's talking about like plans in the future and just like stuff going on. Like, I've missed you and we never like hang out anymore. And Nancy's just kind of like, do you know how many calories you're eating? Like, that's, and her friend's like, no.
Yeah. She's
And
like, I'm basically
besides,
in
like,
law school. I'm going to eat what I want.
yeah. And she's just like, basically, she's like, eat them now because like we're young. This is when we can, you know? And
Yeah.
Nancy's just kind of like, yeah, no, this is grossing me out. Like, she almost looks grossed out. Like,
She does.
It's making her angry in a
Yeah.
way.
Could you imagine like being at either of our houses growing up and saying like anything about like the garbage we ate? Like, I can't imagine
Nancy,
at all.
You know, and that reminds me when we were kids and I would sleep over. Do you remember those Pillsbury pizza cookies?
Oh my gosh.
Pillsbury, not that you're listening, but could you please bring back?
Yes.
It's like this dough that you roll out and it's the size of like a pizza, like a cookie pizza, not an actual like pizza flavor cookie, but like the size of a pizza and you bake it.
Yeah.
And I remember there was like, I think there was like sugar cookie and like
Yeah.
chocolate chip. And oh my gosh, they were so good.
They were so good. They were perfect every time. They were thin
Yes.
enough where they got crispy in the edges.
Yeah, but they
and
were
like
gooey still.
so good. Yeah, we need to bring those back. We need those back.
Please bring those back.
Please
They're
bring those
so
back.
good.
So in the scene with her friend, we also see Nancy, wrapping her thumb and her pointer finger around her wrist. And when Tracy Gold was on Queen Oprah's show, she talked about how that was something she would do frequently, like during her eating disorder. She would take her thumb and her pointer finger, and if they didn't touch, if she wrapped it around her wrist and they didn't touch, she would get triggered and freak out about her weight. So that was something I think
so
that she
sad.
brought into Nancy's character. And
Yeah.
I know that we see that in the yard.
Oh, I never even knew that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's such a good like nuance to add to the film. And like, how sad is that? That's heartbreaking.
It's so sad. And that's the thing. Like, we'll get more into Tracy Gold, obviously, but like her vulnerability is just like so palpable in this. It's almost like,
Yeah.
I had read that in 92, she still wasn't really recovered to the point she needed to be. And this was
Yeah.
in 94. So it was, it was still pretty raw, I would imagine, in terms of her trying to get through this disorder.
Yeah, I think I read that like she still, was recovering because there's scenes where I know she had makeup on to look like sicker, but like, she's very gaunt. She's very skinny. I mean, what a role to play and what a brave person to play that when you're still dealing with things just because you want to bring awareness. I mean, that's a really brave person.
Yeah. So,
but right. So she's kind of like with her mom, like not moving, like, so she sees her friend. And I had to write this down because she goes like to congratulate her dad. Like, I think her dad gets his wings or I don't know. He does something flying that is like a big deal. And the mom, did you catch this? She like turns to Nancy and she's like, if I turned him on as much as these planes do. And I
did. I did. I was like, lady, you need to back off in so many ways.
That was like such a one-liner where I was like, that's not even needed. Like, that was just weird.
No, somebody threw that in and they could have left it out.
Yeah.
I have to find Dad's name because I know he was in Knots Landing and Hawaii Five-0.
Yeah, he's been on a lot of things.
Yeah, and he's like I don't know. I feel like he's so typical. Like he's such a typical 90s dad in this movie. Like if
Yes.
somebody doesn't have like half of their face hanging off because they got like hit by a car, he's like, you're fine,
Fine.
you know? And it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, the time where we went to Sarah's picnic, like her family had a picnic, it was like 6th grade.
Oh, yeah.
And those jumpy moon thing,
Oh, yeah.
bean things, the jumpy. And like I collided with a girl and like half my lip was torn off because like our mouths, so her tooth hit mine.
I
And I
remember.
came home like bleeding profusely. And my dad's like, I don't think she needs to go get stitches. I had like 3 butterfly stitches. Like my lip would have been deformed if I had listened to my dad.
You wouldn't have a mouth. You wouldn't have a mouth today.
So yeah, that was totally 90s dad. For
yeah,
sure.
completely. So the family goes out to dinner and like they're all like, you know, her brothers are razzing her for like not eating again.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like if she wasn't going through this disorder, why would she want to like be with this family anyway? Like it's like very, very like intrusive, like all the time.
Yeah.
Then I think we go into when mom's working out, right?
Right. With
And-
her like best friend's mom.
Oh yes,
So
with
the
Nancy's
lady, I
best
think the
friend's
girl
mom.
that she saw eating the fun size bag of Doritos, they're just like working out together. Right.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know, Nancy looks really, really thin.
Right.
And the mom's just like, I don't think so. Like she's maybe lost a little bit of weight, but I don't really see it. Like she's healthy, she's happy, she eats. And her mom's like, I don't know. Like, and then Nancy's mom is, oh, her friend says, daughter, so weird. Did you notice that? She's like, daughter. I was like, is she like having a stroke? Like what's happening with that?
Is this movie taking a turn? Yeah, no, it was strange. It was strange.
Yeah, and the mom's like, well, no, that's not it. Like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah. Like, my daughter's fine.
The friend's like, just
And-
ask the doctor. She's like, no, because everything she says is like basically yelling. Basically,
Yeah.
like,
Right. And then when Nancy's mom, like, tells her husband, she's like, oh, you know, whatever, said that. Nancy looks too thin. She's like, this is a cockamamie plate. And I was like, wow, I haven't heard that word in like forever. Cockamamie.
That's right.
And then basically it's like, well, mom, you're really wrong because Nancy's like running a 4K on the football stairs at her university.
She
The next
is in the
scene.
middle of the night. And that's what people do.
Right.
So then we find out that Nancy has like a recovering addict uncle. And
okay, yeah.
honestly, thank goodness, right? Because
Yeah.
like he's the only one that knows anything about anything with
Yeah.
all of this.
Right.
And so he is kind of the first, he's kind of the first mention of like kind of understanding what this could be, which again, I think, especially back then, like families didn't have that. Like they just
No.
were like, you know, we're normal and we're going to hang on to that and that's going to be it. And so,
Right.
yeah, he was like a guardian angel, for sure.
Right.
So then it's the holidays and, you know, the brother's like, here's like the full plate of food you didn't eat, Nancy, because it's like a full plate wrapped in a napkin. And he caught her. And, you know, the parents are like, oh my gosh, did you see how much she ate? And it's like, you guys like need to understand that like people can put food in their napkin. Like somehow they don't
Right.
get it.
I don't know how they don't see like a full blown like chicken leg, mashed
Yeah.
potato,
Like
roll.
stuffing.
Like
Right.
that napkin must be as big as that tuna fish sandwich bread. Like that thing
Yeah.
was a blanket, and she's just like,
Yeah.
throwing it all in there. Like everyone notices everything, but you don't notice your child putting pounds of food in a napkin.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like they weren't freaked out. She was like out all night for prom, right?
Right.
They're like not checking their napkins. It's like, come
Right.
on, guys. Like,
yeah.
pick a lane. So then on Christmas, yeah, mom finally sees her like disrobed, right?
Yeah, she kind of like walks in on Nancy, and Nancy's standing at the mirror like self-examining her body, and her mom's just like, oh wow, like you have lost way too much weight. Like this is alarming. And she, in the middle of the Christmas party, like goes down and is like yelling for her husband. Like, I'm sorry, that's not how it would go down. Like, first of all,
Yeah.
you would want a normal person, I guess, to pull your husband aside and be like, we need to talk. Like, we need to get guests home earlier. Like, something is going on. And then you would probably act normal, because why would you, like, in front of your guests? Because why would you, like, I don't know, make this huge spectacle that something's wrong with Nancy in front of everybody? It just seems like just getting rid of her privacy. Like, I wouldn't want to announce to the world, like, my child may have an eating disorder. Like, I just found that strange.
Yeah, like the whole sequence was weird. Like, she's like running out of a house, basically, like, somebody stole our fine china. Like, she's like freaking out. And then Nancy, I think it really shows her like mental decline, because she like comes downstairs in like a leotard. And this entire time she's been like covering up. Yeah. And she's like, I'm just going to wear what I want. And people, I mean, it looked like the reaction from everybody was like a horror movie. Like, they were like completely horrified. Like, she was like a zombie or something. It was like very over the top. Like,
yes.
Yeah. And
I think people would stop and be like, wow, you've lost a lot of weight. Or maybe just kind of be like, oh, but yeah, the overreaction was like way over there. Maybe because mom freaked everybody out. Who knows?
Yeah, it was like, it was a lot. And so, you know, the uncle again was like, hey, I know all about this, you know, because again, anybody that has any kind of disorder is going to know more than these people.
Yeah.
And then the dad's like, hey, like, why are you doing this to yourself, Nance? You know, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, we have so much work to do with dad. And so then the mom's like, just knock it off. Like, they're like, just eat, you know?
Yeah.
She's like, no, like, no.
Yeah. You need to promise me, Nancy, that you're going to eat. Like, that's what they say. Like, and she's just like, yeah, I will. Like, she's just basically like, I'm going to say whatever I need to say to go do what I'm really going to go do. And maybe in Nancy's mind at that point, she was like, she probably just was thinking to herself, if I were her, I'd be like, I know what's best, and what I'm doing is good, and this isn't bad, and you guys are overreacting. This is, you know, you're so far gone in the thought of like for instance, like when my daughter was younger and she had like her health issues, how I controlled my anxiety was through like overly cleaning, because I thought if I can keep the germs away, she won't get sick. And so when people would be like, hey, you need to stop, like, that's a lot of time that you're doing on this. And also like, hey, you've bleached the varnish off the wood floor. Could you knock it off?
Yeah.
Like, in my mind, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. And then I'd just wait for them to leave so I could go do what I needed to do, or what I thought I needed to do. Because it was like, I am protecting in this instance, I felt like I was protecting my child, which I wasn't. But it's just that feeling of like, I know what I'm doing and this is what's best. You guys are the ones that are going to mess this up. You guys are the ones that are the danger. And I think that's probably how Nancy felt. It was probably just like, yeah, I can promise you the world. And I did too. But if I need to do this, I'm going to do it, because this is what I need to do.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it gets so challenging, because it's like in those kind of situations, it's sort of like, you know, people want to be solutionists. They want to like solve everything. And to be honest, it's like we always say, it's all you can do is be there for somebody. I mean, now, if somebody's like causing physical harm to themselves and others, obviously, I think that is a huge, huge difference. But in general, I think the more you try to tell somebody what to do before they're ready to do it, the more they're going to withdraw. I mean, especially the people in this movie. Like, I'd be like, I'm moving far away as soon as I can from all of you. Like, I cannot take it anymore.
And one thing I wanted to note was the like addict uncle who obviously got help. Like, she met up with him and he's just like, he even says, he's like, Nancy, like, I've been through like treatment centers and I've seen girls that look like you. Like, I know what you have. It's called anorexia. Like, you really, you need to go get treatment for this. Like, you look just like them. And Nancy kind of breaks down a little bit to him, because she probably feels like safe enough to be like, and she says, it's a war in my head and I don't know how to stop it. And I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
just know exactly how she feels because I have felt that way through my journey, with other control issues so much. It is just this ongoing battle and it becomes a battle that you don't even feel like you have your mind is doing it and you're now just listening and doing what it says. It's that really hit me because I'm like, that is exactly how it feels. It is a war in your head and you can't control it, even though it's your mind. And her parents, a lot of people don't understand because it's like, well, it's your mind. Like you can just stop it. And it's like, no, I really can't. It's way beyond that. And I just thought that was a really powerful thing to say because that's really how it feels.
Absolutely. And it's the kind of thing too where it's almost like a black hole. Like no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to fill it, but your mind is like, just do this one more thing and then you'll feel better. And it's like,
right.
You're not going to. But again, like you said, you're so removed from yourself that it's like,
yeah,
what do you listen to?
It's completely out of control at that point. And you just feel like I have to do what my mind is saying I need to do, or I am going, I don't even know what's going to happen. You don't even want to challenge it because you're so afraid of what might happen if you don't do the thing that your mind is saying you must do, even though that's the thing that is destroying you.
Right.
So finally, Nancy is going to go into, right, treatment.
Yes, I think it's called Parkside Pavilion. And it's very realistic in terms of, again, her parents. Like they have so many stereotypical ideas. Like the mom is like, we love each other, damn it. Like we have a great life. Like this isn't us, and the specialist is like, whoa, actually it has nothing to do with that. And they all want a quick fix. Like they're all like, okay, how long is this going to take? Like, what does she have to gain? Like, how can we, wrap this up?
Yeah.
Nancy is, in terms of this whole not doing recovery, I mean, she's kind of a badass. Like, she's like, no, I'm not doing it. And I'm coming up with a bunch of ways to not do it.
Yeah. She's very creative. When they're at group therapy.
Yeah.
Okay. One, not to rip on any of the people that were playing this part, but this was just weird to me. Did you notice the one girl that was talking? She was talking, but her lips weren't moving. She was just like, I
did.
And I'm like,
yeah.
How is she doing that? That was kind of amazing. But they're all sharing her feelings. And the therapist asked Tracy, okay, it's your turn to share. And she's like, Tracy, what does recovery look like to you? And Tracy's like, fat. And then she just storms off. And I was like, dang.
Yeah. Yeah. She's not having it. And then she takes her snack and puts it on the windowsill.
Yes.
And the nurse is like, they probably have a bird problem, right? The nurse is like, oh my gosh, I can't do this every day. Yeah. She's like, and it's the nurse that caught her, putting food in her napkin. What is with all the cloth napkins? They should not, the cloth napkin thing should not be going on.
You can't deny someone a napkin because that's just rude and unkind. But if you know that, and I'm sure she's not the first, that people hide it in these gigantic blanket napkins, maybe give them just a normal Bounty paper towel. Nothing where, I could hide an entire lunch in it. Maybe half my snack, but not the whole thing.
Paper's not holding that.
No.
It's not going to hold it. I mean, it's come on, guys. So the nurse is like, oh my God, it's not my first rodeo. I've been dealing with these napkins. I've been dealing with these windowsills. Where's your snack? And Nancy's basically F off without saying it. She just slams the tray out of the nurse's hands.
Yeah. She throws it.
Mm-hmm. And she's fiercely, protecting this disease.
Yes.
Then she goes into straight up demolition, right? To hide food.
Yeah. Well, they're just Nancy, if you're not going to eat and you're not going to follow the rules, then you're going to sit in your room with the windows and doors locked and you are going to eat your snack. Basically, you cannot leave this room until you eat this. And even her bathroom is locked, which made sense because, like, obviously if she could, flush it down the toilet or eat it and binge it. And they're like, well, she's like, what if I have to go? And they're like, just ring this bell. But the nurse doesn't check the closet. I guess that
Right.
was just a bad decision on the nurse's part. And so Nancy goes into her closet, and like the closet is gigantic, by the
It
way.
is.
Like,
It's like a walk-in.
it's like a what? Yeah. I was like, what? And I would think that they would have maybe like, I wouldn't think they would give them that option at all. Like, it would just be like a rack, you hang your clothes. But she like goes in there and just starts like somehow getting a hammer or her fist. I don't know, but she just started making a hole like through the drywall. Which I'm like, nobody hears this. And wouldn't those places normally be like cinder block? Like,
that's what I would
imagine.
think.
Yeah. And so it was just, I mean, I remember when I watched this when I was a kid, and when I saw that part, for whatever reason, that part made me feel like the sickest, like to my stomach. Like there was just something about that action where it was like the extreme of it, that somebody would go to that measure to like avoid eating food, was just so alarming to me. And so she puts her food in there and like puts her sweatshirts back so no one notices. And I was like, could you imagine like the smells in there too? And and just everything.
Well, I don't know if you remember in 4th grade, I had that hamster, Axel.
No.
Okay. He escaped and he like got into the walls.
Oh gosh.
So you can imagine like my mom. And they had to like find him in the walls. And I was just like, putting food in the walls is a real good way to get like vermin. That was my first thought. And, it's like she's sneaking exercise. She like destroys her IV. I mean, she's like gangsta. Like, she's like, I'm not doing this. They're like,
why do they give her a safety pin again? Like, she pulls out a safety pin. Like, all of a sudden she has like an aha moment laying there in bed with her like, I don't think it was a feeding tube yet. It was like just like fluids.
Yeah.
And she's just like, I'm not even getting fluids in my body. And she just whips out like a safety pin. And I'm like, I would think that these girls, maybe I'm wrong, but they would almost be like on like suicide watch in a way, because don't you think they're so depressed that, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
I think that it was interesting, like, seeing the kind of treatment then, because her first time in that facility, at least, there's not that much talk about like what's going on in her brain. It really is like, eat, like you need to gain, like eat. And it's like, that's obviously not, that's not complete treatment, so.
Right.
Yeah. There were a lot of things about that facility where I was like, really? And then I was like, probably. That's probably how it went. So then she has like a lunch date back home with her brother, and it doesn't go well. Because he's like, that's all you're eating. And it's like, okay, obviously, like she's not going to eat she's not going to eat it. So we need to like, stop
move
like
forward,
yelling at her at every meal.
Yeah.
And then, mom finds all the food under the bed that's like rotting.
She's like ditching.
Yeah.
Well, this was the important thing, is that Tracy, is this where, before she came home, did she come home because she signed herself out? She signs herself out.
Yeah, because she had gained 6 pounds.
Yeah.
At the facility.
At the facility, right. So she's just like, that's it. I'm out of here. And her family's like, you should stay. Like, you're not better yet in the facility.
Right. The mom's like, are you sure they said you could go?
Yeah. So but because she's over 18,
right,
obviously, she can legally sign herself out. And she's just like, Mom, come get me.
Yeah.
And the mom does, which was nice of her. I mean, I guess, obviously, I would go get my child too. I wouldn't just leave them. But I would be pretty pissed if they signed themselves out.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes home. And then she just is like, Mom, listen. And like, before she enters the house, she's like, Mom, listen, like, I'm going to get better. Like, I gained 6 pounds there. Like, obviously, I'm on the up and up. I know how to eat. Like, things are going to be fine. I just need to do it my way. Like, that
Right.
place was crazy. They just weren't good to me. And if I can do this in like the comfort of my home, I'm going to be successful.
Right.
And you can tell the mom isn't buying it. But at this point, what choice does she have? She can't legally force her to go. She can't force her to eat. So she just kind of has to go on Tracy's word, which you can tell the mom is like, it's not good. She's
No.
lying to herself and to me, not meaning not knowing that she's lying, but this isn't gonna go good. And
No.
yeah, so Tracy's back to her antics. She's hiding food underneath her bed. And that's when her mom notices everything, which I don't know how they didn't smell it, but whatever. And
Yeah, I mean, they're all in each other's rooms all the time.
all the
But
time.
Sure.
Yeah. And so when Tracy comes in, she's like, Tracy, like, what is all this food under your bed? And she's just like, oh, I was just gonna eat it later. And it's like the bowl
Yeah.
of cereal.
Yeah. It's like Chinese food from the night before. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think
She's
we have
like,
a problem.
Yeah.
Can we talk about mom screaming at the deli?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, with Tracy's obviously losing more and more weight, and there's nothing they can do. And the mom like comes into the deli, and that poor like tuna fish lady, she's just like,
Yeah.
why didn't you see her? You see she's a bag of bones. Why wouldn't you make her eat? And then she's like, they're like, well, you know, she goes, it must be because you're stupid. That's it.
Right.
You're just stupid. And like all this stuff.
Yeah. They're like, we make and serve food. Like this, like there's no job that's going to make her eat, lady.
Yeah.
You know,
And
stop screaming at us.
Yeah, they kind of like say like, we can't force her to eat. We want her to get better, but like, what do you want us to do? Tie her down and shove the tuna in her mouth? Like, it's not happening. And
No.
the mom kind of comes to her senses, and she's very apologetic, and she's
Yeah.
just like, the mom is just, she's so afraid. She
Yeah.
knows that Nancy is dying. She knows that she can't fix this. And so now she's at the point, like in the whole, like, I feel like mental grieving process of like blame. It's just like, who can I blame for not making this better? Because I just don't know what to do. And so yelling at her deli coworkers makes sense to me in that moment. But then she comes to her senses, and it's like, they have nothing to do with this. This is not just about her eating. I think that's kind of the point where she's just like, I can't just force her to eat. Like, this is more.
Right. Right. Like she's still kind of like, we're freaking perfect. Why is this happening? But she's a little bit more like, you know, accepting what the situation actually is.
Yeah.
So.
And they just kind of start going into blame. Like they start, the mom kind of comes out where the boys are working on the koi pond with the dad for the millionth time. And she's just like, I don't know. I guess our life was just so perfect that God just was like, I'm going to mess it up for you because something has to go wrong. And I was like, in that moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've said that so many times.
Yeah. It's like a definite realization for her.
Yeah. So her family kind of is starting to try to go to their desperate antics to get her to like get better because they don't know what to do. And I think it's her older brother that takes her to the mall.
Yeah.
And she sees like a childhood friend, and her friend comes up to her and is like, oh my gosh, hi, Nancy. And because her brother had gone off, he's like, I know something you're really going to enjoy. And it's like, dude, if it's food, you need to rethink that. So, but they're at a food court, so you can guess what's going to happen.
Right.
Now. And her friend from like, I don't know, grade school is just like, wow, Nance, like you look great. And she's like Kate Moss. And I'm like, okay. So this was the whole like Kate Moss era, which is kind of like what we grew up with. Not that models now aren't incredibly thin, and I'm sure there are so many pressures to be thin, but I do feel like recently there's been some more representation. Not a lot, but a little bit. But in the like mid 90s, late 90s, like Kate Moss was.
It was like heroin chic for sure.
Yes.
And this scene, again, like in the 90s was so normal just in terms of conversation. I mean, honestly, for me, especially now, like as a mother, like have made such a conscious effort to literally not comment on anyone's body whatsoever.
Right.
Like, we don't do that. We don't say if something's good. We don't say if something's bad.
Right.
We do not encroach on that. And I don't think that that is necessarily the norm. But in the 90s, I mean, it definitely was celebrated. And
Yeah.
more than that, it was the only answer. It was the right answer. It was the
Right.
only right answer. And so this scene, looking at it now, you're like, wow, what a dum-dum. But like, it was the attitude, you know,
Right.
across the country for sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, incredibly damaging. Then her brother's like trying to force feed her, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
He brings like the most decadent, like fat laden thing. Like nothing that somebody that's dealing with like weight issues is going to want to eat because that thing was
Right.
probably 2,000 calories. He's like, come on, Nancy, you used to eat this up. And he's like putting it on a fork, like trying to feed her. And
Yeah.
she's just like, no, no. And then he's just like, fine, you're driving everybody nuts. And he like storms off and leaves her at the mall. And in my mind, I'm like, well, you're a dodo, but I thought it was good because the family never really shows like emotion. And he was
Right.
finally getting to the point where like he's mad because, yeah, he wants her to feel better. And he's also mad because it's like this is affecting his life now. His parents are probably stressed out to the max. The house is
Yeah.
probably in terrible, like just that feeling of anxiety. Nothing's going well. Nobody knows how to save her. And it's something that she can control. It's not like she has cancer and you're like, I don't know if you're going to live or die.
Right.
And you can be like just there for them because they can't control this. This is just happening to them. This is something where from the outside, you know, especially a brother is going to be like, you can control this. Like you can just open your mouth and eat and this can
Right.
get better. So they're not looking at the fact that, sure, maybe she doesn't have like a physical disease, but she has very much a disease and it's mental. And that's the problem with mental disease. You can't see it. Nobody can see it, but it's there.
Right.
And it's sometimes, I think mental disease in a lot of ways in that way are a lot harder to process because, you know, if you know someone's bedridden from cancer, you are, like I said, you're going to be by their side. If they're like not eating because their mind is just destroyed, everyone's just going to be like, do the normal thing. What is wrong with you? Mind
Right.
over matter, mind over matter. And it's like, she's so far gone. It's not mind over matter. Why wouldn't they prescribe her psychiatric drugs to begin with?
And again, I don't know if it was just like a movie representation or how it was, but like it just didn't seem like treatment was far enough along. Like
Yeah.
it was like, we need to like stop the symptom, which is the weight loss.
Right.
And we're not dealing with like the core. I mean, they are, but not how it is now. Like, I think it's like, it was just not
Understood. Yeah.
researched at that point. And it's pretty clear from seeing this that there wasn't a lot of help. I mean, like she was in that facility. It's like her family obviously like, you know, had resources and money,
Right.
but it didn't even seem like that great of a place. So I can't even imagine somebody that didn't have, you know, the resources to get help. So then later, doesn't dad like throw a bowl and call her a bag of bones?
Yeah. Well, he's just like, Nancy, like, what are you doing? Like, you know, you need to eat, or I don't know. She's in the kitchen.
Oh,
like,
she's making lettuce, right? She's tearing
yeah,
lettuce.
she's making her food, which is basically like romaine or iceberg lettuce. So 0 calories, but just enough to, I don't know, keep her alive. Like, I don't even know at this point. And the dad's just like, you need to eat something else. And she's like, I will. And he's like, you know, throws it. He's like, why are you doing this? Like, what did we do to you? And, you know, the dad just, he's like, you're a bag of bones. And, you know that the dad, he is probably angry at her because I think you would be. It's like, why are you doing this to us? Why are you doing this to yourself? But also it's just, they are in now the desperation. They're in the desperation phase of like, she's going to die. And like, there's no drug we can give her to make her better. And again, this is something that could go away if she just did like a human natural thing and eat.
Right.
And it's just, they don't understand the mental component. They don't understand what she needs. And it's pure parent desperation.
Absolutely. So then she's making like a really weird soup in the kitchen. Like she pulls like every ingredient out and is like measuring and then like remeasuring and then like putting stuff away and then taking stuff out and like,
Yeah, skimming
yeah,
the fat off of the broth.
yeah,
It is done for like hours. Like her mom's like, you were in here at 10 a.m. and it's the end of the day and you're still skimming fat off of the soup. And I wanted to share, this was a recent story of a girl because I was just like looking at anorexia. And that really stood out to me because there was a girl, this made me so sad. She passed away from the disease. And when she was in her like last days, this was like in 2021, her family, the dad said, at the end, my daughter wasn't even in there anymore. Like she would talk, but my daughter
yeah.
wasn't in there. Like for 5 days, all she could talk about was the fact that she didn't know if she drank when she had a sip of soda, if it was diet Dr. Pepper or regular Dr. Pepper. And she
Wow.
just, that was the entire conversation for 5 days. She just could not move past that one thing. And that was kind of what I felt like was in this scene too. Like she was like, I can't eat this soup until every little piece of fat is off of it, even though the fat
Right.
was what she needed, first of all. And secondly, like it wasn't even there. And it's
Right.
that obsession of just like needing to satisfy, like they're at the point where their mind can't even be satisfied. There's
No.
nothing that's going to make it feel okay. Like in the beginning, if you say no to a sandwich, she felt like, okay, I'm in control. The control is lost. She can't even control the feelings of control. It's gone. It's just
totally gone.
Yeah. Her mind is just, yeah, there's no controlling even the control anymore. She's too far in it.
It's a very, I think, realistic scene. And she fights with mom and then she like falls going up the stairs.
Yeah.
And then she's kind of like trapped on the couch, right? Like she's kind of like bedridden essentially.
Yeah, she's so weak. She can't even get off the couch. And I just remember there's a scene with her brother, Zach Morris, at Markel. And he's like out in that like car. And the mom, like, I think before she's on the couch, she had tucked Nancy into bed. She was still
Yeah.
upstairs in bed. And she like looked out the window and she saw him in the car and he looks up at her. And my heart broke because I was like, one, these brothers were like super dopey. Like they kind of acted like they were 5 and were treated like they were 5. Like I don't know if you noticed that, but I felt like they were way more lax with the boys than with Nancy. Like,
Oh yeah, I felt like it was like classic white male privilege. Like,
yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if one ended up being like, you know, a compulsive gambler and one ended up like burying prostitutes. I mean, like, I was like, they're gonna have issues too, but it's not about them. It's about Nancy,
right?
You know.
So she, like, the mom is just like, I think realizing like I have other children with needs, and
Yeah.
she kind of goes down there, and he's just like. It was a really good moment. Like I felt like acting wise because he was just like, she's like, why aren't you coming in? And he's like, I'm scared. I'm scared to come in the house and Nancy's going to die. And he's like, can we just like sit out here for a little while? And she kind of like grabs his hand and they just kind of sit together like in silence. And I thought that was really powerful because obviously the mom is capable of listening and she's capable of emotionally being there for her children. And maybe this is kind of the start of her realizing that sometimes it's just being there. It's not offering solutions. It's just sitting with somebody and just holding their hand or letting them talk or not talk. And that's what Nancy needed a long time ago. But, you know, we're all fallible. We all make mistakes. And as parents, especially. And so you kind of start to think like, is this the beginning of, you know, change in the family?
Yeah, that was a very powerful scene. So then it turns out that Nancy has a kidney infection. That doctor has horrible bedside manner, by the way. He was like, yeah, I don't know. She could die. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And
sorry about that. She needs to eat. She's going to die. It's like, really, Brainiac? I didn't notice.
yeah, I was like, yikes. And then, the dad, who is played by William Devane, he is still he's still kind of making it about them. And it is about them, but not in that way. Like, he's still like, why is this happening to us? And that's why I think what ends up happening with the dad is so amazing.
Yes.
But once she's in the hospital and once she has this serious infection, they start discussing options in terms of, taking control of her health decisions.
Yeah. And basically, they go back to the clinic and they're like, you have to accept her. Like, she's going to die. And they're like, we know. But what we suggest is that, she comes back here because sometimes treatment is better the second time around. And they're like, well, she can sign herself out. And the therapist or person in charge, I don't know, at the place is like, well, what you need to do is take her to court then and basically prove that she's incompetent. And they're like, say that our daughter is like nuts. And he like, I mean, yeah, in a way, like she's not like nuts, like in a bad way. It's just like she's not mentally capable of making good decisions. So you need to basically prove her is incompetent of making medical decisions.
Right.
So that she has to forcefully go into treatment or she will die. That's just, it's one or two. So either take your kid to court or watch her die.
Right.
And the dad is just really, I mean, obviously any parent is just like, I don't know how to do that. And because it's just kind of like, it almost feels like betrayal because who would want to do that to their grown child? Like nobody.
Right.
And the person in charge, the therapist at the place is like, the mom's like, okay, what do I have to do? And he's like, no, not you.
Yeah.
You
He's like
Nancy,
anyone but you.
not you, control freak, number one. She's like, you and Nancy are like way too connected. And I thought that was like really great because I think a lot of women, especially who have these kind of issues, kind of have a very not good, like almost like codependent relationship with their mom. Like it can be very much like, yeah. And so he's kind of like basically being like, you and Nancy are way too codependent on each other and like life. It needs to come from dad because dad is just like, he's going to be the one that she's never going to expect it from. But he's going to be the one that's going to be like, if my dad is doing this, then I'm messed up because my dad would never do this. He doesn't try to control me. Like he's like the fun guy, like this is not good. So he really battles with that. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But the mom's like, if you don't, she's going to die. And so he goes to the lawyer and, he's like, I need you to draft these papers. And he's like, okay, it could take a few months. He's like, she'll be dead. You need to do this now. So they get on it. And Nancy also gets like a self-appointed lawyer that comes like to the house.
Court. I think it's a court-appointed lawyer.
Yes, court-appointed. Yes.
Right. And I mean, by the way, how awkward is that? Like you're living in your house and this is like going on.
Yeah. And obviously she's thrown back because she's like, what? Like, I didn't even know I was going to court. Like,
She's like, I'm bedridden. They're like, get ready for court.
How do lawyers do it when they know their client is wrong? Like, you can tell the woman sees her and she's like, yeah, you're dying. Like, you need to go. And she's just kind of like, Nancy, are you even going to be like well enough to do this? And she's just like, if I'm going to win, yeah, I'm going to do it. And so she's like, okay, I'll represent you. And so I was like, how, like, I had to actually like Google that. Like I got on Reddit and I was like, how do lawyers like represent somebody when they clearly know it's not in the best interest of them or they're like guilty in a way? And I don't know, like, how do you do that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like probably like what, a lot of defense attorneys do. Like, they're like, I don't care if they're guilty or not. I don't care if they're right or wrong. Like, this is a job and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So
I guess it's a different topic, but it just kind of like jarred me where it's like, you see this girl, she's dying. I mean, she's like bone thin. She's dying. And you're just going to be like, no, she can make good decisions. She knows what she's
Yeah.
doing. It's like, I'd be
Well,
like, I'm sorry, Nance, gotta go.
and I don't think it was the case back then. I think now there's like also a lot more awareness because it's almost like somebody always has to have some kind of representation. Like
Right.
somebody always has to have some kind of like protection because
Yeah.
like clearly like Nancy needed this and needed help. But in some cases, I'm sure, you know, like parents are trying to get control and it's for the wrong reasons or they're whacked or whatever. And
Right.
so maybe it's more like that, like a formality.
Yeah.
Because like this attorney is like, I know which way this is gonna go.
Right.
It's obvious.
It's obviously
So-
you're dying, girl.
Yeah.
But then she leaves to go to court. And I thought it was really sweet that, you know, Zach Morris like was like, you know, we're here for you, Nance. Like, good luck and stuff. Even though he's probably like, oh my gosh, she better lose. Like, she's gonna die. But
Yeah.
he at least is showing like support. Like, he wants to know that his sister's not alone. He doesn't want her to die, but he just wants her to know, like, you know, we're here. And
Right.
then the scene where they're on their way to the courthouse, it was beautiful and it was also hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
She's looking out the window at this like grove of trees where she like used to run. I think that's where she was running in the beginning of the film.
Right.
And which is so typical of Lifetime movies or made for TV movies where like they circle back to like that first scene of like,
Right.
you know, what life was. And
Right.
we've done like a whole like, you know, 360. And she starts seeing like people like living life, like, and she starts to think like you can see in her face like that's what life was. But can we talk about what they chose
I know.
as like
I thought the same thing. Like, I'm like, this is not making life look appealing to me.
it looked like a Sears ad, like a bad one, or like
Yeah.
Kmart or something. Like it was like there's like a family and like they don't fit together, but they're like put together. And
Yeah.
there's a way too old daughter that should really be his wife, but is too young to be his wife, blowing bubbles in this like dad's face. And
Yep.
then there's like a couple riding a bike, both on the same seat,
Yep.
not a two-seater. They're
Yep.
just sharing like a bike seat and they're riding a bike. And it was just like, I don't know. It was just
It was
hilarious.
odd.
It was
It
a
was
lot.
odd.
But Nancy's
Yeah.
coming alive. She's watching it and she's just like, oh yeah. And then I wrote, everyone looks like they're on an airport, like tarmac, the ground, like it moves.
The
Like you
moving
don't have to
walkway.
look-
Yeah.
yeah, the walkway. And you just like
Yeah.
stand on it and it like takes you. Like that's how they look in action. Like it just
Oh,
looks like
yeah.
they're on a treadmill.
It was so awkward. It was like they ran out of budget and they were like, let's get some stock footage and just shove it in here. Like, this is not complete and we need to finish this up. It was very unaspirational. It was
Yeah.
very much not
It was-
making me excited about life.
But the good thing is it motivated Tracy and she
It
wanted
did.
those bubbles real bad.
It did.
And-
It did. It did what it had to do, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she gets to the courthouse and there's like which they never reference later. There's like ABC News, Fox News, NBC
Yeah.
News. Like it is like paparazzi. And they're just like, the mom's just like, get out of our way. Leave my daughter alone. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how did they even hear about this case?
I mean, yeah, it was so instant and like so unexpected. And it was like a circus.
But they never reference it after. It's not like she goes
No.
and takes an interview on the camera or they're just like, Nancy, tell us why, you know, like
Right.
the case went this way. Nothing. It's just like a weird scene where she's bombarded by the paparazzi and the news. And I guess nobody had anything better to do. Like it was just so weird. I didn't understand that
was.
scene at all. It made no sense. So
No.
yeah.
No. It was an opportunity too. Like maybe this was one of like the first cases where a parent had to get power of attorney over, you know, a
Right.
kid that had an eating disorder. But like, it would have been nice to know that. Like it was
Yeah.
just like kind of like thrown in there.
Yeah, it was completely thrown. That was like a last minute thought. And
Yeah.
they should have either went with it or they should have just got
Yeah.
rid of it because that was just unnecessary and weird.
It was very strange.
But they go through the court, process, and the dad's on the stand, and they're just like, do you think your daughter, is incompetent? And he's like, basically he's just kind of like, she's not crazy, but yeah, she can't make good, medical decisions. And, but before he says that, like kind of the nail in the coffin of being like, is this what you want? Nancy starts to realize like her dad's on the stand. He's basically pleading for her life. She watched, the people on their bicycles. It really impacted her. And so she knows he needs to answer like, yes, she's incompetent, but he's struggling to say it.
Yeah.
He's struggling to like, and I'm sure in his mind, like be disloyal to his daughter. And the little airplane wings, he had given her, oh, that's it. We forgot about that. He had given her little airplane wings.
Right.
When she was at the house before he went to court, and he was like, I want you to have these. Like they always brought me really good luck, and this was one of the best days of my life. And I want you to have it. And so she held on to it. And when he is struggling to admit, yes, she's incompetent, she needs us to intervene. She knows it too. Finally, it clicks. Like, I can't do this by myself, and I need somebody to get me help because I'm so lost. She holds the little wings up so he sees them. And like, that was like such a beautiful, like that made me tear up because it was just such a beautiful moment between parent and child. She's basically giving her dad the okay to say that she's incompetent. And I mean, she needs help, and they share that together. And I just thought that was beautiful. I loved that they included that in the film.
I thought she like nailed it. I just think
she was
the
wonderful.
whole film, she was really, really, really strong. And
she's a really good actress. And when you watch her in interviews, there's no difference between her in an interview and her in a film. She's so natural.
She is so natural.
Yeah, it's just watching everyday life. There's really no difference between her as a person and her character. She's just fluid. She's a very good actress. And she did a really good job with this. And I love the fact that the judge, when he rules, yes, like she will be seen as incompetent, he's like, I need to make a note here. Yeah. I'm not saying that you're incompetent because is the same as you're crazy. Right. Because you're not crazy. I'm saying that you realize you have a problem and that you need, people who love you and outside resources to help you get through this. And that's a sign of like bravery and a sign of somebody who is in the right mindset. Because you realize that you need help. Yeah,
that was great. Like, and needed. And again, you have to remember, this is like the first time a lot of people are even hearing about this disorder and this disease. Yeah. Like, it's not something that was like talked about, and there wasn't education about it. And, there also wasn't a lot of differentiation between different disorders and diseases. Like, it was very like, you're this or you're that. You are like able to handle it yourself or you're not. I do think, that was like a really good remark.
People who are struggling like with like addiction or just control, things like that, like you do feel crazy. You feel crazy all the time. And you just to hear, I mean, because I felt crazy all the time with my own struggles. And you just kind of think like, what's wrong with me? I can't stop this. Like, I should be able to stop this. You're just, you're disappointing your family. You're disappointing yourself. You're angry. Everything just feels, you literally do feel crazy. You really, really do. And that's why, like, I also think that she would have benefited a lot from some sort of antidepressant. Not that that's like the only answer, but I think for a lot of people it can kind of calm you a little, like the jumbled thoughts, and just kind of be like, okay, what's going on? But you do feel crazy. And especially I think in the mid-90s, like you said, I think you would be seen as crazy. And it was just good for people watching to hear finally someone say, you're not crazy. If you can admit that you need help, like you are in a good mindset. You're a very intelligent person. You just need help. And I think in the 90s, that was not hard. I think it's still hard to this day for people to.
I agree. I mean, I think maybe we've talked about this, but in the We Can Do Hard Things podcast, there's always a lot of discussion about how people, are not taught how to be human. And so that's
Yeah.
why people that are addicts or have disorders who go through treatment, they're learning how to be human. And
Right.
it's a shame that you can't just learn how to be human without having to go into treatment for something,
Yeah.
because it is very difficult, like just in general, to live your true self. And so I think that to bucket somebody or to categorize somebody or to essentially, throw them away was
Mhm.
really common back then. And luckily, I mean, I do think there's a lot of improvement.
I think so too. I
Yeah,
think there's just like I think families hopefully are a lot more like aware too of just the complexities of life and just like decisions and not trying to I don't know, just force people into like you said like into categories and things like that and just to understand that behaviors are not just because people are trying to be difficult or children are trying to be difficult. Usually there's a lot more behind them that's going
right,
on. And it's getting to those core issues and understanding why that's going to be way more effective than just being like, stop doing that. Like,
right,
you can control it. Stop doing that. Maybe a child that, is really hyperactive. Maybe it's something physical, but maybe it's also something where they're just not feeling seen. And you
right.
need to like look at both of those things are both important.
Absolutely. And even like in Tracy Gold's case, like, you know, she was a young child actress and she had thoughts of dieting as early as 7 years old.
That's so sad.
And,
My gosh.
then was in an industry where I read that on Growing Pains, there were like constant jokes about her weight, like on the show, like written into the
Yes.
show.
Yes.
And so essentially it's like a little girl who's like developing an eating disorder
Yeah.
and is like put into this career path that is like very, very, I don't know, it seems like a rich minefield for eating disorders to develop
Mhm.
further.
Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds like she worked her entire childhood and her entire adolescence. And then it wasn't until she was really an adult where it was like, oh, she legit has a problem and,
Mhm.
she needs to like get some help.
Right.
So those are like formative developmental years,
Yes.
and it just seems like it was like, this is how it is until it's like so apparently visible that this is a
Yeah.
problem,
Yeah.
which is like heartbreaking for her.
It is. And I'm sure there's probably so much still pressure like in Hollywood to be that way and to be thin. And I can't even imagine the grotesque things that go on to men and women in the industry that we'll never, hear about or know about. But I do think that we are in a time of better representation, which makes me hopeful. Like I think, like Selena Gomez, for instance, I think she's wonderful. Like I know she has like lupus and things like that, but she very much like loves her body. And that wasn't the case when she was a teenager.
No.
She struggled with things. And you have other women in the industry that just are themselves. And that's really exciting to see. I hope that means there's a turnaround in just how we view bodies and also just a good mental place for, women growing up. And I agree with you. I'm the same way with my daughter. Like, really try hard to never talk about people's bodies or comment on my own body or say, oh, does this make me look fat? Or, oh, does this make me look like, like this or that? Because I remember I did that like once or twice. And then she came out to me and was like, do I look fat in these pants? And I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Like
Yeah.
I
Right.
kiboshed that. I hope I did like immediately. And I'm like, it's more about health than it is about how you look and just trying to refocus what is important. But, it's everywhere. And yeah, I just hope that there's a change in that because it's just, it's something that shouldn't be on anyone's radar. Just be healthy.
Yeah, I think that it's like if we get to the point eventually where it's just like everyone is a human that happens to have, different things about them and different like flaws. And some of these humans happen to have, jobs in the industry. I think that that is just going to be a healthier way to approach image and removing all of the things about yourself. Like, it's almost like the relationship with yourself is the most important one, which we talk about all the time. And the value that you hold in yourself has nothing to do with anything except you loving yourself. Like, it doesn't matter like what your job is. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter, where you live. It's just like your value has nothing to do with that. And so I think that like the messaging is more that way these days, but I think it's very important for young people to like understand that they have people that will just listen and not
Yes,
try.
that is definitely so important. Also, just as parents, it's hard, but you can't, obviously you can't let your child like do whatever they want, but don't just, look at behaviors and understand that it's partly decision, it's partly maybe physical, but like it's also just them trying to understand life too, and it's important to just be there for them than necessarily to tell them what to do. Like, yes, you need to guide them. Yes, you need to say, hey, this is an unsafe decision. Or, when they're little, like, don't put your hands on the stove because you'll get burned. But especially as they get older, I went to a freshman orientation night for my daughter. She's starting high school. And they said, you kind of have to let your child go through the stress. Like, I'm not saying that you don't, help them and support them. Of course you do. But you also have to let them figure things out. Like, you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Right.
And I think that that's a common theme that I've had like in therapy and also like with my own daughter. It's like learning how to be comfortable with the uncomfortable and not trying to make everything like right and perfect and just make sure that there's no like bad things ever in your life. Like you can't prevent it. It's going to happen. It's learning how to just be present. And I think that if we can all do that, especially as parents, we're going to be better equipped to like hear when our child is hurting. Like when Nancy said, like, that makes me feel sad. Stop and be like, well, oh, really? Why? Or what about it makes you sad? And give them that opportunity to explain to you what they're feeling.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, because feelings aren't facts. They're feelings.
Right.
So let them feel it.
Right.
And then,
you can
it's like,
go from there and come up with solutions together. If a solution is even needed. Sometimes you just need to vent and just say, I feel this way. And then the next minute, your kid's outside with their friends having a great time. Like, there's so many emotions going on, like it's just, this was a very good film. I really liked it for the, showing anorexia and the things like that. But just as a parent, I felt like, it really hit me in a way that was different because I'm like, I really saw myself in the mom in a lot of ways. And it's just a reminder that, I tend to be very controlling. So not that I don't want to be in a bad way, but just I am. And so it's just kind of like learning how to listen to people, just be there for them.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It was a good film.
It was a strong film. And, Tracy Gold did go on to get married and have 4 kids. There is an episode of Wife Swap that she's in. So for anybody interested, check that out. And then there's a lot of good eating disorder resources on the National Institute of Mental Health website. So that is a really robust site to go to if you want more information or help with any of those topics. And as always, please feel free to email us with any other movie requests or suggestions because we're wide open.
We are.
And thank you for listening. We appreciate you.
We really do.
Have a great day.
Have a great day.